Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. Relationships have the power to wound us and the power to heal us. As a clinical psychologist, author, and professor at Northwestern University, I've devoted my life to studying intimate partnerships and family dynamics. On Reimagining Love, I'm here to translate complex clinical topics into tools and takeaways that you can use in your relationships today. If you're ready to develop relational self-awareness and create vibrant and loving relationships with the people who matter most to you, you've come to the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. Hi there, I hope you're well. I am so excited to welcome Nedra Tawwab back to Reimagining Love. Today, Nedra is joining me for a spacious and in-depth conversation about managing unhealthy family relationships and how, as adults, we get to heal or redefine our relationships with our parents. Nedra Tawwab is the author of the New York Times bestsellers Drama Free and Set Boundaries, Find Peace. A licensed therapist and sought-after relationship expert, she has practiced relationship therapy for more than 15 years. Nedra has appeared as an expert on Red Table Talk, The Breakfast Club, Good Morning America, and CBS Morning Show, to name a few. And her work has been highlighted in the New York Times, The Guardian, and Vice. She's appeared on numerous podcasts, including The School of Greatness, We Can Do Hard Things, and 10% Happier. Tawwab runs a popular Instagram account where she shares practices, tools, and reflections for mental health and relationships. Last time she joined me on Reimagining Love, she was here to discuss all things boundaries. Today, we're bringing her empowering approach to setting boundaries in difficult family dynamics, which is the subject of her new books, Drama Free and the Drama Free Workbook. In the workbook, Nedra helps readers move from insight to action through offering tangible practices and skills that help you both prevent estrangement and decide if estrangement is the right choice. Skills that can help us acknowledge when our family members have changed and accept when they cannot. In this conversation, Nedra embodies this whole philosophy by encouraging us to live our insights so that we can be released from patterns and deep wounds from our childhoods. Together, Nedra and I investigate the parent-child relationship from both sides as adults who have redefined our own relationships with our own parents, and now also from our view as parents. Finally, we respond to a listener's question about how to navigate conflicting intergenerational stories and resentments that have emerged in the wake of a listener's grandmother's death. It's often in our relationships with our families of origin that we feel our most vulnerable, but Nedra's work and energy embodies empowerment. I hope that her sage and direct wisdom in this conversation inspires you to find your power even in your most difficult relationships. Nedra, welcome back to Reimagining Love. It's so good to see you.
Well, it is so amazing to be on again. Thank you.
I love that you just keep writing books and you're very hard to keep up with because it gives me an easy excuse to have you back on the show. Like just write a book, come back on, write a book, come back on.
Yeah, I'm in my energetic season.
I love it.
So I'm embracing it and I'm allowing that to unfold for now because very soon I might be in my turtle season. So I'm just letting it happen.
I love it. I love it. Well, it's selfishly, it's good for me, but if I'm being a little bit selfless, it is good for all the people that you reach with your work. And I have a bunch of things I want to explore from your brand new book. But before we do that, I want to hear a little bit about you by asking you our relational self-awareness question. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay. So Nedra, could you talk to us a little bit about how you are reimagining love in one of your important relationships these days?
I'm I have been exploring what patience actually means in
Hmm.
relationships. I think it's one of those words that we often throw around. I need more patience. But in those moments of needing to be patient, many of us are challenged. And so I'm just thinking about how can I be loving and patient while taking care of myself? So sometimes that is allowing people to get something off their chest and then letting them finish and saying, hey, I wanted to talk to you for just a little bit and we could talk about it for a minute, but I want to give you a call back so we can really get into it. So just being a patient listener, responding to, my children when they have things going on and I'm in the middle of something, just taking a breath and, transferring some positive energy to them. So trying to be patient in how I respond, even when I'm disrupted, I don't have the time, all of those things. It's like that is the practice of love.
That is the practice of love. That is. Yeah. And maybe a little bit, maybe a growing edge because it is an energetic season for you where if you have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of creativity, I can only imagine the amount of kind of inbound requests and interests and things that people are really excited, places people are excited to have you and invite you into that I imagine makes it even more challenging than to practice patience, which is kind of slow and not bound by the minutes on a clock.
Yes.
And it's not bound by efficiency. Patience is not particularly efficient.
Yes. I am definitely the sort of person where if someone is talking really slow, I'm thinking like, they could go faster.
Do you have a 1.5 speed button on you somewhere?
I'm like, maybe if I talk really fast, they'll start talking faster and then we'll have a fast conversation and they don't think they can slow down anymore.
Right.
But that doesn't work. So I'm
No.
just like, you know what? This is their tone, this is their pace, and let them go.
Well, yeah. And there's something in there for us busy folk too. Like I just came from a week of staying with my mom who's 80, who's recovering from a significant medical situation. And boy, oh boy, was she a teacher to me about patience because every story has got 8 little side roads, about this person that don't I remember them from 8th grade? And, have you been to Marshall's lately? Because they have this new thing, all of this side road, which is just like, nothing could be more urgent in my life than just being patient with my mom. And in doing so, it was giving me that practice, like getting my reps in, around like, okay, I don't have to keep it moving right now. I can just be here with her. But it's an active practice, right?
Yeah. And my only job right now is to listen.
And my only job is to listen.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Okay. All right. Patience is the practice. So in the season of energetic, you have, since I saw you last, you have launched a podcast called You Need to Hear This. And you've written 2 new books, Drama Free, A Guide to Managing Unhealthy Family Relationships. And this one that we're talking about today, the Drama Free Workbook, Practical Exercises for Managing Unhealthy Family Relationships, which I loved. I love it because it comes from you. And I just have such admiration for everything you do. But I love it because you really are helping people go from the insights to the practices. Like, okay, so I get it. I think I'm getting it a little bit more, but how do I actually make the changes in my life? What is it that you love about creating companion workbooks?
I think much of the self-help that we read, it's digested, sort of processed, and then put down. Every once in a while, we'll read something that we'll practice, but it takes a lot of work to practice stuff and not as much work to read a good book. So I think a workbook to go with the book is hopefully a way for us to deepen our practice of this stuff. Family relationships are really hard. Setting boundaries, it's a really hard practice. And so we do need the repetition to get better at it. And so the workbooks are really, it's like, yes, you read the book and it was really good. Now let's get to the practice of the work.
How do you want this to live in your life? What are the changes that you want to create out of this new expanded awareness.
Absolutely. What will be different after reading the book? What will be different after practicing the exercises in the workbook? How will you live this material?
Yeah. You are giving your readers ways of navigating right here, right now, today, relationships with difficult family members, our parents, our aunties and uncles, grandparents, siblings, adult kids. But you, of course, are starting us with our own experiences of when we were kids, because that is where the roots of all of this is, right? We can't just pick up at age 25 or 45 or 65 and understand why we experience relationships in the way we do until we've got a grasp of those early, like, love template experiences, I call them. So I know that sometimes we want to just kind of put the past in the past and move on. But you start off by telling us that's not a long-term solution. We've got to face our challenges, the challenges that we had back then that planted the seeds for the challenges that we have today. Why? Why is kind of like just focus on the present? Why doesn't that work for us as a long-term solution?
Because we never really do it. The past is the present. It is a part of how we show up in our relationships. We may pretend to be over things, and those things are still very relevant in the relationship. And you hear that a lot with family conversations. People may, if someone betrayed, someone in the family, it may be talked about, but it's like, but we have to invite them, or we have to, have this faux trust with them, even if we don't trust them, even if we haven't had this conversation around, this is what I need to actually trust you. We need to repair the disruption in our relationship. So when we are forgiving and forgetting, we're not repairing the disruption. We're going back to that situation with all of the feelings that we had and continuing to be in that relationship. And over time, the resentment can get so big that we start to have all of these health issues. We start to feel anxious. We start to feel depressed. We start to, feel compassion fatigue, like all of these things as we engage with this person that we truly haven't forgiven for this, thing that they did to us.
As you say that, it makes me think about how we also then, by being unwilling or too afraid, or, we don't want to rock the boat, we also deprive that person who betrayed in the past, we deprive that person the chance of showing up differently today, because we've got them in that box of, you did this thing 25 years ago. But then we keep ourselves from knowing or hearing anything about their journey as well and how they might be different today. Maybe they're not. Maybe they haven't. Maybe they put it in a box and they didn't deal with it. But there is that way in which, by opening that hard conversation, as you call it, there might be something we hear that we hadn't heard before, something that they have done in terms of their own processing and understanding of themselves that we wouldn't otherwise know.
Yeah. And unfortunately, sometimes people haven't done any work.
Nope.
And how do we show up in those family relationships where the person is denying the truth of a situation or unwilling to grant us any repair in that situation? Because there are some people who say, well, that's just the way I am.
Yeah. Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. That's the way I am. And really what that's offering us is a choice. That is actually a question. Do I want to take them as they are? If I take them as they are, how will I show up in the relationship? It's not always, oh, I can't talk to this person because they refuse to stop talking about politics. But there's a whole set of things I could do when they start talking about politics. Or I can't be in this relationship with this person because they have an addiction. There's a whole set of things that I can do to be in relationship with someone who has an addiction.
Yeah.
But it may not be the ideal relationship. And I think with families, we think that if I can't have the ideal relationship, we can't have a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people who are drawn to your work and to my work because we believe in the power of healing, the thing we want is for the person with addiction to heal. The thing we want is for the person who is deceitful to recognize it, own it, and heal it. So I think anything else feels like a booby prize, or like a consolation prize. Like anything else about like how I have to pivot, how I have to step away feels like, but wait, if they would just do their work, we could have a whole different relationship.
Yeah. That makes me think about when villains die and they're still talking junk as they're dying. I think that's so like, I hate you, kill me. It's like, oh, wow. Because sometimes you do see that person who's like, tell my mother I said, but every once in a while in movies, you'll see this person who's like not remorseful at all.
Yeah.
Which lets me know that, yes, it's on TV, but that's not make believe. Some people are just not remorseful for what they did. They disagree with your perspective of them. They may feel like you deserve it. Like there is this idea that, if I just share this with them, they'll feel a way about it. And what's really hard is for us to see ourselves as harmful people. And so if you tell some people that they're harmful, the best way for them to preserve their identity of themselves is to deny what you're saying. Because I can't be good and this thing that you're saying I am. So I must be good and you must be crazy.
Right. That's right. And that is true. Even if you do every page of Nedra's workbook and you work on your language, your soft startup, you lead with love, you come to them, really reaching for their highest self, right? They may just continue to show you this. No, this door is closed. I cannot, I will not, I won't, I am not going to look at this situation any other way besides I did not do wrong and you're overreacting or you don't have your facts. And there's something then about the letting go and the acceptance that it doesn't matter if you stand on your head, if you include some jazz hands as you present it, like there's nothing that that door is closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sad.
Yes.
It's sad for us and it's sad for them because they can't be in relationship in a way that could be healthy. And that's really sad to know that there is a human there's a body, but mentally they're not able to tap into that vulnerability and to face the shame of what is being said to them and really deal with some of these things. I truly believe that becoming a parent toughened my skin some because my kids say stuff that hurts my feelings. I'm going on a field trip this week with my daughter. And she said, do you want to sit next to me on the bus? I said, that would be nice. And then a few hours later, she said, well, I don't know how to say this. And then she ran out the room. I already knew what she was about to say. Yeah. And then she came back in the room and she's like, oh, I'm going to say something. You're going to be mad. Don't be mad, blah, blah, blah. She said, of course.
Yeah.
I don't want you to sit next to me on the bus.
It's embarrassing. Even though you're literally Nedra, coolest gal on the internet.
I know.
What the heck?
And I said to her, she was like, oh, but if you're going to be mad, I said, no, I want you to enjoy your time. This is your field trip with your school. And I'll manage my feelings around this. You're growing up. You get to decide what feels good to you. And you're going to be, you're going to be miserable on this trip if I have to sit next to you the whole time. I don't want that because if I say I want my children to be happy, guess what that means? Maybe not sitting next to them on the field trip.
That's right. That's right.
That would make her unhappy.
That's right. That's right.
I'll go and look at my baby pictures of you and I'll have my little cry in the closet. And
and then you will just sit quietly and not make eye contact and just have your day.
I will leave you alone. Got message received. It hurts my feelings. However, I want you to be able to speak up for yourself. So I have to allow my feelings to be hurt. And you don't have to manage my feelings being hurt.
I love it.
And that's what I said. You don't have to manage my feelings. I can manage my own feelings. Say what you need to say.
Yeah, beautiful. And I don't know what your experience was in your family growing up, but if you can't even imagine the ability to say that to your own parents, what a gift. What a gift that you have raised a daughter who can speak truth to power, who can, you being the power, like that she can speak truth to you without fear of retaliation, without fear of you withdrawing from her, punishing her. It's just right. That when our kids can speak truth, that's right. It's all about the thickness of our skin, right? Because that ability to have a kid who can speak truth to you is just so vital.
It's so important.
I will say it comes around. I now have a 19-year-old daughter who just recently was like, Mom, would you be available to process some dynamics in my dating relationship? And I had to do everything in my power to just keep my chill, because this is the moment I've been waiting for. I was like, may I prepare some maps and PowerPoints? And, I had to just keep my chill. Sure. And just so it comes around. But yeah, right now you are a little embarrassing.
Yeah, well, I have two, and the youngest one is still very much all about me, and she assures me she won't do the same thing, but I think she will. She just doesn't know it yet. But, being able to speak your truth in a safe environment is really important, and I think it really sets us up to be able to do that in the world.
Yeah.
If we could talk about more things with the people we love, I don't think we will have as many estrangements. I don't think we will have as many low contact or no contact type situations, because we're able to repair with a person. Sometimes people don't offer you a space to repair because they are so centered on not listening to the thing you have to say and not making any changes for this relationship to work. Many parents who are estranged from their kids, they feel really bad about it, and yet they won't make any of the important changes to have this child in their life. I think of a client in particular who told his parents that he has a partner now, and the parents were not necessarily accepting, and they told him all of the biblical things and all of these things, but yet they missed him. And I just thought it would be so loving for them to just let their guards down and embrace this. We're not talking about theology. We're not talking about right or wrong. We're talking about the love of your child that you actually miss. You can be in that relationship, or you could be really right about religion.
Right.
You can pick
one or
one.
the other. You can pick one.
Yeah.
You cannot have both.
You cannot have both. And if you want to be in that relationship, you may have to make some changes, not with your religion, but with your religion on them. Your religion on you can be whatever it is, but your religion on them might have to look a little bit different.
Yeah. And that is, tell me if you disagree. I mean, it is 100 times out of 100, the elders' generation, because the data shows that when a cutoff happens, it is the younger generation most commonly cutting off the older generation rather than vice versa more commonly. And there's just more responsibility on the elder generation to make that space, to be available, to say, see how far you can come to me, and then I will come the rest of the way to you because I'm the parent. Does not matter that you're 40 and I'm 60. Does not matter that we are both adults. I am forever the parent. You're the one, child, who has the experience of being little when I was big. Like that forever. Like the playing field is never, ever, ever going to be even. So there's, to me, always more responsibility on the parent to do their work in the face of the child, not the other way around. How do you see that?
I agree with that. I think the parent typically doesn't have a lot of leverage.
No.
They don't have a lot of leverage.
Especially if they want to be a grandparent.
Yeah. It's like, what's your leverage? Are you going to take my cell phone? Are you going to take my tablet away?
Inheritance. There might be a little you could maybe waive a little inheritance, but you really don't do that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of leverage. And I don't want to say they have more stake in the relationship, but when you're younger, you have the capacity to build other relationships. And those can be parental like relationships with other people if your parents don't want to make some of those changes that you're requesting. And sometimes those changes aren't very big.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard some very, I don't want to say small, I don't want to rate them, but changes such as, hey, I noticed a difference between how you treat me and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to pay for family vacation, they should have to pay for family vacation. If, so those sort of things where a parent has the opportunity to say, there is a difference here.
Mm-hmm.
And I am doing it in this. I am advocating for your sibling. And you're right. I'm not, there's an opportunity there. But if you deny it and you say, that's not true, well, I have to pay for their stuff because X, Y, and Z, you are now leaving this person alone. So when they get to the point and they say, well, I don't want to go on trips anymore. If I have to pay and they don't have to pay, I don't want to go. And then the parent is sad, like, why don't they want to go? You don't want to change the rules around the paying of the vacations? You can be fair. Now you can pay for everybody.
Right.
Or you can make them chip in. But it's things like that. It's not necessarily all of this old stuff from childhood that people are bringing up. It's things that parents are doing presently that is very painful for adult children.
Which is very often, like in that example, what the younger generation is saying is, listen, I want to be able to engage with you. I want to be able to travel with you. I want to be able to make memories with you. And in order to do that, can we please figure out a different way of navigating the finances? Because it really is, I'm finding it's really getting in my way and it's fueling some resentment. But the heart of it is, I want to be with you. And so I do think there's a measure of responsibility on the younger generation to approach the older generation in a way that maximizes the chances that the older generation can hear them. That doesn't mean the jazz hands and the standing on your head, but to speak, I think we can speak truth with kindness. We don't need to come in, guns blazing and with that whole litany of things that go back to the 80s. I think it can be like, listen, I have a problem. I'm kind of stuck here. Can we look at this together? I think there's a collaborative way to approach that can increase the chances of our parents hearing while still saying that the bulk of the burden is on the older generation.
Yeah. And I think parents parent with perspective that children don't have. Like parents know the sacrifices they've made, the things they've prioritized, the things they've deprioritized. Kids don't know that much about their parenting. And so a parent may feel like, well, I did a great job based on X, Y, and Z. And the child is thinking, you did okay. You did okay, or you didn't do a good job, which can be very insulting to a person who truly did do their best.
Yes.
It may not have been the best situation, but if they were choosing between A and B and they chose B, that was the best decision, even if it wasn't the right one for you. And so, yes, when you bring this information to them, they have this historical context of, I made a great decision there. And it's like, no, that wasn't a great decision. So the two different perspectives, I think sometimes we have to honor that everyone is entitled to their own perspective of events.
Yeah. And in that situation, I really would want the parent to be able to practice self-compassion so that they can practice accountability.
Mm-hmm.
The self-compassion is remembering that, yeah, I remember that moment. I remember that I was depressed. I remember that my partner was struggling with addiction. I remember that we were scraping by month, and to kind of offer that gentleness to yourself so that you can be accountable to the impact that had on your kid. I wanted to talk to you about the stuff that gets going between intimate partners around each other's families of origin, the dynamics that happen, in a marriage or long-term partnership. It's not just two people coming together. It's two people and two family systems that are coming together. Mm-hmm. So when there is dysfunction in one or both families of origin, how can a couple protect their partner while also inviting them in? Like what are some of the things that you see that get kicked up for couples when they're trying to navigate things with extended family?
Best practice is to manage your own family and their stuff and to not subject your partner to your brother's nonsense or your, like protect your partner. I see the most challenges where a person's partner is a little more passive about things that are problematic, or they may not even have an issue with it. Like it's just been their normal way of functioning in their family. They may not see certain things as dysfunctional. They may not see things as someone trying to take advantage of them, but they have a partner who says, seems like this person is always taking advantage of you. They're always borrowing stuff and not, but your partner kind of sees it from a different perspective. And for that, I would say, there is a space for us to place boundaries even with our partners' families. When our partners can't stand up and do that work, it is still our house and our family within it. And so if our partner is unwilling to protect our children as they go over to the in-laws, that's where I would have to step in as the parent and say, hey, these things can or can't happen. And I understand that, they won't say anything to you, but here are the rules, here are the expectations.
Mm-hmm. I really hear you around to the degree that you can for each partner to kind of manage their own family system. And I think that there are ways that when people get married, I think part of the myth or the hope is now I don't have to be alone with my difficult family. Now I have you with me in my difficult family. And that's not quite fair. And I think it is complicated because I think your partner can be an ally. I think your partner can be a sounding board. But to have your partner as tangled up in family dynamics as you are actually doesn't help. Now you both are enmeshed. Now you both are brought in. Now you both are slipping into codependent patterns. And it is helpful actually to kind of keep your partner resourced and at a distance. And so that idea of like my partner can be a support to me by being a sounding board, by validating my experiences, but to try to get my partner as brought in as I am isn't going to actually do either of us any good.
Yeah, and it could be really helpful to notice to our partners when we observe their behavior shifting when they're in certain family environments. Like, hey, I notice after your mom comes to visit, you're pretty withdrawn the days after. You really shut down. You're not as talkative. You're not sharing what's going on with your day. Do you get into a deep processing once that happens? So if we notice some things, I think sometimes instead of asking questions, we go in with, talking about this person in a bad way, or we're accusing them. You need to do this with your mom, instead of really tapping into their feelings of what they might be experiencing when they, have these visits. And so the more we can notice that with them, hopefully they'll start to notice that with themselves. Like, oh my gosh, I am on my phone more in their presence, or I'm trying to, I'll go to the store. I'm trying to escape the engagement. And I didn't even know that I was doing that. So having a partner who can kind of highlight some of that nuance is really helpful.
That is so critical versus look at you. Look what you do. When your mom comes to visit, you shut down. Look how you're doing. Like, see clearly she's crazy and you're just trying to protect yourself. Because then so often what happens is that person is like, no, she's not. She's my mom. Don't talk about my mom like that. It can create the conditions for a kind of defensiveness that then sits between the partners of the couple. So I like how you're languaging that, like the partner observing, hey, I notice that you seem to be on your phone a little bit more. You seem to be staying in bed a little bit longer than usual. Like, are you noticing that? Like just like floating it, kind of floating an observation so that you don't get into that polarization of your mom is making you crazy. No, she's not. She's my mom. Don't talk about her like that.
Mm-hmm. And then what can be done differently if you're noticing with certain family interactions, instead of walking into it with the idea of the solution, brainstorming. with your partner. So if you loan your brother this money this time, what is the deadline for him to pay you back? Should you have a deadline? Do you expect it back? Like, how much should you, if he asks for this amount, should you give him the whole amount? Like, what are some ideas here? Because chances are this other person isn't even considering this. It's like the person asked, I said yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, giving them some ideas about maybe not even for this time, but for next
the future.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the future. Here are some things you might want to consider with loaning people things, that maybe there should be, some turnaround time for payback. Maybe there should be some, them accumulating some of that on their own and then you stepping in to help. Like, of course, we want to support people, but what can that look like?
And so often, I think one of the big things that gets in the way is shame. I've had so many couples over the years where one has kind of a relatively intact, pretty adaptive family of origin, and one has a really tangly family of origin. So in this situation, if the one from the tangly family of origin has this brother who borrows money and there's kind of poor boundaries around all of that, when the partner says, hey, I see that's about to happen again. You're going to loan him money. He's not going to pay it back. I think what can happen for that partner is shame, not just shame about my inability to have a boundary, but shame about this whole family that I'm from. Like, kind of like that loyalty bind of like, these are my people. This is where I came from. And it's really hard for me to know that my partner sees our dysfunction. It can feel kind of exposing. It can feel kind of shameful. And so I think there again, it's the partner's in a difficult spot of, again, gently floating. Like, I love you. I see so much strength in you. Like, you've done such a beautiful job. You've grown so much. And I think we're about to get into one of these things that can be really hard for you, where you feel so much pressure and pull from your family. And you end up in a spot that creates resentment in you, creates tension between us. How can we do it differently? Like, just to kind of find a way to talk about it without triggering that shame of, my whole family is sick and dysfunctional and twisty, and you see it. And now I feel, kind of wrapped up in it and exposed because you're watching me try to deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to know how to support our partners without being judgmental about their situation, because some situations are harmful to the point of maybe abuse. And they're still in that cycle and they're not necessarily equipped to get out of it. This is, unfortunately their norm. You can see when someone is maybe manipulating them or when someone is, gaslighting them. And you're like, don't you see this? And, when we have that level of understanding, sometimes our instinct is to protect, but with our protection, we are isolating them from their family. And so we have to think about, some ways to get creative around them talking about their stuff. Like, you can start with couples therapy and just see what comes out. Maybe it'll lead to individual.
Right.
There are many ways to address someone having a issue that is impacting your dynamic. And that's one of the things you could go to couples therapy for, that, I really want to support and be there for my partner. And I see them having these family challenges and it does impact our relationship because I don't want to see them hurting. And so my instinct is to protect them and maybe meddle a little bit. And I really like them to find some tools to manage some of the trauma they've experienced.
Your point about couples therapy is such a good one. Forbes published last year some data where they talked to couples who'd gotten divorced and asked them the reasons for the divorce. And it's always a tricky question because I think the reason for a divorce is there's the blatant reasons and the latent reasons and, the conscious and the unconscious. But when you ask that question, what they found was the top two were family, kind of in-law, family system dynamics and work dynamics, these things that are kind of outside of the couple that deeply shape the space for a couple. So I think it's a really good point around, you can go to couples therapy just to say, we're getting into some conflict about how to handle our adult sibs, how to handle aging parents, we have maybe cultural differences that shape expectations around what boundaries should look like. We have levels of kind of function and dysfunction that are different between our families that are affecting us, and to have somebody in there helping have those hard conversations that don't necessarily have easy, simple, straightforward answers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about estrangement? You had mentioned this in the beginning, that the skills that you are teaching in the workbook really are designed. If you've got multiple members of a family system who are willing to engage in the drama-free workbook, who are willing to look at their role in a dynamic, I think you're right that we reduce the chances of a cutoff. But there are times, your whole chapter is called Deciding to End What You Can't Mend. Like, there are times when it really does feel like I have to choose my family system or my health, my sanity, my safety, my relationship with my partner. You start us off with a process of self-reflection, like really looking at what have you tried so far? What is the impact of this dysfunctional relationship on you physically, on you emotionally, on you behaviorally, on your other relationships? So you really start us off by looking at what is the price we are paying for trying to preserve this family relationship that we're thinking about maybe needing to cut off or distance from. Why is it so important to start with that self-reflection piece before we even get into whether and when and how to put space between ourselves and that family member?
Well, it's really important for us to be aware of the work that we've done to be in the relationship, because sometimes we forget. We feel like we're giving up too soon. We haven't tried enough. So that awareness of, actually, I've tried several things. I can recall a time where I ended a family relationship and we were put into conversation again. And I listed all of the things that I've done to be in that relationship with that person, all of the boundaries that I tried to set, all of the times that I repeated the boundaries that I was setting, all of the times I owned my boundary and showed up with it, and it still didn't work. The attempt to go low contact, right?
Yeah.
So I won't talk to you all the time, but I'll talk all of my things. And so I felt like I was making a sound decision, because at this point, I'm out of options. There's nothing else to be done, because there is no work that you feel you need to do in this situation. And I'm out of work that I'm willing to do in this situation, because the only thing that could work is for me to tolerate this dysfunction. And that's the thing that I'm unwilling to do. So if we are aware of all of the attempts we've made to repair, to mend, and how patterns have repeated themselves, we can in good conscience say, I have tried.
The more we are grounded in our understanding of what we have tried, the harder it is to guilt us, to get us to second guess ourselves, to even get us to engage in a back and forth about it's this, no, it's this. You've got it wrong. No, you've got it wrong, right? Because if I'm grounded in what I know I've tried, my awareness of the consequences of trying to engage in a relationship or stay in a relationship that is deeply unhealthy, then when you protest it, I can just say, I hear you. I hear that you don't understand. And I'm sorry that you don't understand. And this is what I need to do. Versus engaging and trying to convince you, like trying to get your permission for me to
leave.
Step away.
Yeah. And sometimes in families that happens. When we decide to end a relationship, people will let you know that you can't. Right? There were some people who will continue to pursue you. They may start a smear campaign. Other family members are pulled into it to try to save the relationship. So ending a relationship can create a lot of drama.
Yes.
And that's where we have to be able to say, hey, I understand extended family members that, you want this to work out, but based on my relationship with this person, it's not going to go that way. And I think it's really interesting in families, how our aunt's relationship with our parent, who might be their sibling, is very different than our relationship with them as our parent.
Yeah.
And so their perspective of this person, it comes all the way from childhood and seeing them with those little cute cheeks and
climbing trees.
It's like, I don't have that perspective. We don't have the same perspective. You're trying to get me to adopt some historical context that I don't have. And all I know is I want to be taken care of as a child.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I need. I don't need a playmate. So your perspective as a sibling, that's very relevant for a sibling relationship. So we do have to consider the source or the role of the person encouraging us to stay in a dysfunctional situation, even when it's, sibling to sibling. Sometimes a parent will say, well, it's your sister, it's your brother. A parent's connection to their child might be different than the connection you have with the sibling. And so their perspective of you can't talk to this person, it's like, I think I can talk to a person who's emotionally abusive, who's this, who's that, who's this, who's that. You don't feel like you can do that. Yeah, you may have unconditional love for your child. I have a few conditions.
Yeah. Oh, it's so well said. Okay, let's take all of that to this listener question that I really want to have you weigh in on. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
So this is a listener. She's anonymous from Connecticut, she, her pronouns. And she says, my grandmother took ill and received a short prognosis. Her house was abruptly sold. She moved in with my mother. Months turned to over a year, and my mom began narrating an untrue story of history, which I found disrespectful to my amazing grandma. And sadly, this impacted the comfort and care she received, making her a burden, often arguing, feeling alone, etc. Against my grandmother's wishes, she was moved to hospice for her final days, but I was able to be at her bedside and care for her through her final night and as she took her last breath. It was very sad, beautiful. I fulfilled my promise to her. My mom was surprised when I cried, and she didn't know how to comfort me. She showed little emotion of her own, and she voiced only relief. I changed my flight immediately, flew home. I'm struggling with how to move forward. My mom views herself as a selfless caretaker. I see nothing but an inability to care for others, to be emotionally present, or even to live in a reality. How can we move forward if not for us, for my own children? Help.
Separating the relationships could be key here. Your relationship with your mother, it is influenced by your mother's relationship with her mother, but their relationship was between them, and we don't have all of the information to determine how she felt about treating her mother. We don't know about how her mother treated her in childhood, the level of care like all of those things, which if someone is your grandparent, that's a little different. And so observing that from the outside, it might seem like, oh my gosh, they're being selfish. But it could be a situation of you never cared for me and now I have to care for you. I have to be kind to you when you weren't able to show kindness to me. Now, is it right? No. But does it happen? Absolutely. And so I wouldn't base my relationship with my mom on how she treated her mom, because there may be some things there that you don't know about or understand. People may share, a part of their story with you, but you don't know everything. And grief looks differently. A part of grief can be relief, especially when someone has had a long suffering diagnosis of cancer, of dementia, of Alzheimer's, of, chronic pain. Family members do feel relieved. There is some, I knew of a person whose brother died by suicide. And this person said to me, I'm so relieved that he's no longer in constant pain around, he was in and out of facilities. He was, so of course I want him to be on this earth, but guess what? Having him here, it's very painful to watch. It's very painful to watch our, parents not be able to care for themselves. The person who cared for you can't care for themselves. So there's so much here that we may not understand. And so if our interpretation is, they're a mean person, where else is that true? Where else is that person inconsiderate? Where else is that person exhibiting some of these qualities that they exhibited in this one unique situation that we don't have full awareness of?
Yep. Yeah. And it may very well be that this experience, this chapter that she went through with her mom and grandma really did have this echo or resonance for our listener around all of the times that she has felt that her mother has invalidated and rendered invisible her experience and her perspective. So it was just like salt on a really tender wound for sure. But I love what you're inviting her to do, which is, can she, for her own sake and her own healing, put a bit of distance and imagine that there may be stuff between mom and grandma that she was not there for, she doesn't know, she doesn't understand, even as she tends to all the ways that she experienced once again her mom's whatever, her mom's kind of self-centeredness. So I think holding on to both of those being true, I can see that as a path towards just kind of turning some of the intensity down around this. I also think, since we know our listener is a mama herself, there's kind of an interesting opportunity here because she may very well raise children of her own who have a very different relationship with her mom than she does, to her little kids. Her mom is grandma, and grandma and mom are not the same thing. So this may be like, this whole experience may have been a training ground for our listener for those times when she's going to have to watch her kids relate to grandma with a whole lot less complexity. Because what's beautiful here is that she's describing, I related to grandma as she was dying with very little complexity. I was there for her. It was easy. I was by her side. I held her as she took her last breath. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. She was not burdened in her relationship with her grandma the way that potentially, as you're suggesting, mom may have been burdened in her relationship with grandma. Okay. So hold that, because that all may come through again, in the relationship between your children and their grandma. And there's something potentially really beautiful and like kind of none of her business, and the more she can move away from this experience or heal this experience, the less chance there is that she will burden her own children with the baggage she carries in her relationship with her mom. She will liberate her children to get to have whatever relationship with grandma they want to have or they can have.
Yeah, beautifully said.
What would you want her thinking about if she's discerning whether and when and how to maybe raise this with mom? What are the factors you'd want her to be considering?
I wonder if this is a question of self reconciliation, or if this is something that you need to repair and reconcile with your parent. I think this is something for you to process. But at this point, your grandmother is no longer here. So there's a person who can't be involved. And your mother may have a lot of complexities around this situation that she may need to address in a different setting, not with her child. So just noting that you receive some information here about some things that could be going on, and maybe take that back to your personal therapist and continue to process it.
I think that makes good sense. And I could imagine her going through a process of forgiving her mom for the ways in which her mom wasn't able to facilitate the kind of grieving process that our listener really wanted to have. Okay, mom was limited in that way. Mom couldn't create the kind of atmosphere that she really wanted and needed. And thank goodness she found ways to be with her grandma in the ways that felt good to her, despite her mom's limitations. Yeah. Yeah. And then what are the relationships that she has cultivated now as an adult where she does feel seen and witnessed and validated, where there's some more kind of adaptability and pliability?
Yeah. And loving connection and interaction. Sometimes our parents can't offer that to us. And it is, our duty to take care of ourselves and find it in other places.
I love it. Oh, Nedra, thank you.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes. So I suspect that nearly everybody, if not everybody, knows exactly where to find you. We will put in the show notes where to get your new companion workbook and all of your good books, your card deck, your podcast. But where else? Where can people go to be near you and learning from you?
Yes, I'm available on most social media platforms at Nedra Tawwab, and you can check out my website, which is nedratawwab.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Nedra, for joining me here on Reimagining Love. If you want to engage more with Nedra's work, I'm putting links to her books, her podcast, and more in the show notes. And thank you to our brave Reimagining Love listener who wrote that question. I hope that our feedback helps you in your journey. And thank you for listening to this episode. I am glad that you're here. And until next time, be well. Reimagining Love is produced and edited by Emily Reeves. Our theme music was composed by Slade Warnkin. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.